First of all, I'm really happy to be part of this panel. I have already met the panelists, and I hope I'll bring out the best of every one of you. And hopefully you can help me with that, because it's really hard to pick your mind with everything that you build on and you know. Today, this panel is to explore how clusters can drive growth, innovation, and job creation in sectors like energy, green infrastructure, and sustainable agriculture. We will discuss cluster formation and its benefits, policies around these clusters and their frameworks, technological innovations, public and private partnerships, and most importantly, the regional collaboration that we're all hoping to have. But first, I would love to introduce the panelists. First, we have Nadine Khoury, the CEO of Quinta Group, and co-founded Elysée Wise, and she's the head of business development. We have, yes. Antoine Skayem founded Free Energy in 2012, led the acquisition in 2017, and was able to expand to the GCC, to the KSA, and even further. And he also co-founded Riego, which also is working under Free Energy. And last but not least, we have Karl, the director of Smart ESA, the cluster development. He has a really strong background in science and business, coming from the US, California, and France. He's a former EY principal. He's been in strategy and innovation, managed clusters and PPP platforms in France, designed H2020 acceleration programs, and he's quite an expert in photonics, deep tech, and biomimicry. Please, let's show a hand. First, I'm gonna start with the local question. And based on past experiences that we already have, QOOT. Nadine, can you tell me what is the most critical lessons for other clusters that you have learned in building and sustaining such a cluster in Lebanon?
Hello, everyone. First, I'm very proud to be with Karl and Antoine and you.
Thank you.
And I love to talk about QOOT, so I can stay the whole day long. So QOOT is the first agri-food innovation cluster in Lebanon. When we started, we didn't know what is clustering mean. So it was first as a concept. It was very hard for us to understand, and the founding members were not used to this. So that's why we partner with a Dutch cluster, Food Valley, and they taught us the governance of a cluster and the meaning of a cluster, which is mainly for business development. So it is business development, it is collaborative work, and it's innovation and R&D. So this is the difference between us and other associations or syndicates. While the others, they go for lobbying, for advocacy, we as a cluster, it's mainly for economic growth and business development under the big umbrella of innovation. And I'm very happy that QOOT will be the mother of two other clusters.
We're all happy with that. Just a follow-up questions on this. So you basically mentioned the early stage challenges. Considering the private sector, how were you able to build trust at first? How you were doing that effort? And can you tell me more about this?
As mentioned before, it was not easy because, for example, having like a Quinta, a greenhouse producer, what does it have to do with wineries or breweries or dairies or poultry? It was difficult for us to grasp. Then, luckily, we started with 7 members. Now we are 133 members. The idea behind it is we did a lot of workshops, a lot of webinars, a lot of training and capacity building. And it's all the work of the team, of the board, and we visited monthly each member. So we visited them. It's very important. So the member is the core of this. And as a board, we would like to say always, and as a team, that you have to believe in it. it's a passion that drives you, it's a belief that drives you, and you can succeed.
Thank you, Nadine. I would love to go to Antoine. I know that you've worked on the mapping of the energy sector in Lebanon, trying to come up with a roadmap for the cluster with Yusuf. Can you tell us more on the situation on the energy sector in the country? What are the top gaps? What are the opportunities? Where are we at today?
Thank you, Ralph. It's such a great pleasure being here today. I had the honors to work on the market assessment and market mapping report that was used as the baseline and benchmark for the energy cluster that we're currently launching. And one of what I would like to share today are the major findings of this report, which were then used as the basis of the low-hanging fruits and objectives of the cluster. So the major findings of the report are mainly lack of financing and access to funds and finance. And I would like to put things in perspective that when we worked on this report, it was before the latest political developments, يعني ما تشكلت الحكومة, blah, blah, blah. So it was based on insight that we got from the market, based on their experience from 2018-19 till mid-war. So most of these findings are still valid with some nuances. So I would go first with the access to finance. That was one major concern. Second concern was the lack of regulation and standardization in the market. But I believe after the ministries are now in order, it's work in progress at the moment somehow. A third important point was access to quality skills. And we've seen lately some action by IECD, Mahad Buhuth, IRI, with the LCEC to put an action in like actionable plan for this. But still companies are growing at a fast rate where they still lack access to quality skills. And last point will be that throughout our mapping and talking to people and looking at the market from this different aspects, we discovered that there are a lot of R&D attempts and a lot of R&D that is happening across the value chain that people did not know of. Like, we are in the domain and we did not know that these things are happening here. So we all know like Lebanon does not manufacture solar panels or inverters, but we do a lot on assembly, and we discovered that there's lithium battery assembly in Lebanon. A lot of companies were working on really innovative mounting structure solutions. We have the know-how and engineering capabilities to work on containerized assembly, like to assemble containerized solutions. For Lebanon is such an environment, ecosystem that allows us to really work on, it's a safe space where companies can work on really pushing R&D and like we have all the crazy scenarios, yani, 4 different power input in a small factory, and then like these complicated situations that allows you eventually to export these solutions. And I have personal experience in that from my experience in some projects in Lebanon that were remote or complicated. Now we're doing like really interesting stuff on oil and gas pipelines in the Gulf because of what we learned in Lebanon. And I'm doing it not alone. I'm doing it by clustering or cooperating with local partners here that at face value you would say we're competitors. But really, if you just change your mindset, and this is basically the objective of the cluster mainly, is for us to make a bigger cake and for everyone to eat.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I love what you just said, and I had so many follow-up questions, but the narrative just gave it all, which will help me go to Karl. Basically, we have a forming cluster. We have an already formed cluster, and you've seen many initiatives happening in Europe. Based on your experience managing and collaborating clusters across Europe, including those with green or deep tech focuses, what lessons or approaches can be transferable or translated in the Lebanese context?
Hi. Hello, everyone. Yeah, so I've been working there, and actually, I didn't mention when we talked, but I've been sent here to build some clusters.
Oh.
But not in this field, in the field of education. So my colleagues will talk about it after, which is a very hard field, but we'll try to have a cluster from the Ministry of Education all the way to the parents. So first thing I can say is that clustering is clustering or die, basically. So the clustering theory is not that old. It's from Michael Porter in the 80s, 90s. But the model is not stable. I mean, it's evolving all the time, because now it's really innovative cluster, sometimes more focused around the universities, because to spit out technologies and startups, or industrial district. So very, very various. The first cluster I managed in France was a cluster in gathering different materials. It was called fiber cluster, because it went from wood to composite with textile, because a composite is just a textile with resin around it. And the idea was like how to get bigger markets and how to get involved in the recycling also. And there are a lot of ideas there that can be done, especially because they worked, but then they failed because the oil price went down, and then the companies could not survive at one time in 2008. But yeah, so the first cluster we built, when I arrived, it was just like coming out. There was 20 companies, and in 1 year we moved to 200 members. So it was really the clustering effect with animation, like a very big animation policy, events, making users and developers meeting, basically, and university bringing some technologies or platforms to try it. So I think one of the key elements of the cluster is the event policy between the members, and then big events. Because in this cluster, what we decided to do at one time, we didn't really invent something great. We just looked what was our northern neighbors were doing in Scandinavia, and they were reinstalling chemistry out of wood. And so we said, okay, this is good because this is going to save our paper mills. So how can we do green chemistry out of wood? And we created an event all together that we could WoodChem. That was an international event where we had everyone coming and discuss about this to show that you can really do something out of wood for this. So big efforts and collective efforts sometimes also, like we reinstalled the business branch, or from agriculture to composite with hemp, because hemp had disappeared from the east of France. So we encouraged farmers to do it so that we could do composite out of it, and it was a good circle. For the other thing is that in Europe, very often they have some call for grants, and you can support them. And most of those call for grants are to do what they call cross-fertilizing. And at this time, when those calls were getting more popular, I had moved back to my more original background, like deep tech. And so what we did is that we did some deep tech alliances to go and see the agro-food farming. So we worked with farming from Scandinavia, from Denmark, and see how photonics and digitalization can help them to be better, spend less water, prove that what they are saying is true, change the business branches instead of selling to a supermarket, like having some other business branches. And we did this very often with Bad Württemberg and Barcelona, where there was also photonics. And we also did some expeditions, like how can we go together to India? Because India is developing its agro-food business, packaging it instead of people at home like cooking like they used to do. They are really moving into this, or at least they were moving into this in 2016 and 17. So I don't know now at the moment if it is too late to go or not. But we went together like this. So it's really cooperation. And that's what is interesting, is cooperation. And clusters are really supported in Europe by the government and the regional governments, meaning as a cluster manager with the board, we are invited, for example, by Paris region to define the business development action of the region, to design the roadmap, basically. And the same with the Ministry of France.
Sounds good. I wanted to know more about the policies and institutional frameworks that embodied these clusters, because today we have a already existing cluster. We have two others in the building. And as you mentioned, it is crucial to have public sector really working together with the clusters so they can, and I would love to build up follow-up questions to Antoine, especially because of the discussion that we had earlier about the regional collaboration and how a cluster backed from its government and from the private sector, talking about PPPs, how would you see it thriving? And if all the panelists actually can add some points on this, because we have some stuff on the agricultural part. I know for a fact for the waste sector, we do have a lot. But first, let's tackle the institutional framework. Today, if you can help us a bit, and then Antoine, since you did the analysis of the gap that we have, how can we build on that as well?
In France, that's where I know the best, there were some initiatives, some call for clusterings. So those calls for the very big clusters, innovative clusters, were supported by the French government. That was active in the clusters at 25% of the funding of the clusters until they slowly move out and leave the regional governments. But then it really depends on the maturity of the country. When I was visiting the Swedish clusters, for example, they were even managing the money to finance the projects, basically, meaning like they didn't have this, the bank, the state bank would give the cluster would say we would have like 3 innovative projects this year, and they would manage directly. They would not have to go for calls again. So there was a difference of maturity between Sweden, the trust to the cluster, to the private sector, and France, where you still have to apply for calls all the time. But it's really mixing and defining a future for the governance. In the governance, there's always the municipalities and the regions, and then the industries, the universities, and all the players, and the industries from big to small, and including some of the users most of the time, because it's really important to see what are the users' needs. So it's like, for the waste industry, for example, I would encourage to bring a lot of waste producers.
Antoine.
So regarding that aspect, for this cluster to create value, looking at QOOT's model, it needs to really find, to amplify or to work on the whole value chain of the energy sector. Yani, based on the finding where the R&D is fragmented, for example, making sure to communicate what is happening across the sector might create opportunities abroad, might put people together. For working across the value chain is key to enable expanding the market abroad, one, or opening up the diaspora market, where the cluster will serve as a pool of experts, of potential subcontractors, of potential service providers for similar companies that require some of these services abroad. And it's something that MENA, we personally had experience with, where we were service providers for other companies in Northern Europe, where our services were at par when it comes to engineering and quality, but at a much lower price tag due to their burdened costs in terms of taxation and. So this is how the cluster is able to open up markets, physical markets, actual markets of countries, out tagging on the diaspora's potential abroad as service providers. That's one of the low-hanging fruits that we were able to identify.
First, Ralph, I'm very happy now because we have one new expert with QOOT. So Karl will be our consultant now, since he has a lot of know-how in the agriculture and agri-food sector. I'm very happy. Welcome to QOOT. But what I want to say that here in Lebanon, QOOT was subsidized. We started from Beritech and the Dutch embassy. So we are not financed by the government. And I reassure that clustering is very new in Lebanon. So it takes time for the government to understand. But PPP projects are mainly the core to shift the cluster from an idea or a concept to really doing an impact. I would like to mention a few examples we are doing with QOOT, with the public sector and with the academia. For example, we did a project on contract farming with the Ministry of Agriculture and with ILO, and we are training and doing capacity building for farmers, for around 600 farmers. So this is very good. Another example also we did with the Ministry of Economy and Ministry of Industry for everything related to the export. And we are working together and also with the syndicate of Lebanese agri-food industrialists. So we are working together for the exhibition, for the trade missions. So this relation or this collaboration between public and the cluster is really doing a great impact. Right. And I don't agree with Antoine that first, at the beginning, we should really be very strong locally to be able to expand to the region. Right. Because it needs a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of dedication, and for the members to really understand this and to start collaborate together. So being strong locally is the first step to do.
I would love to ask you a bit about the PPP that you worked with the ministry. Was it a project initiated by the cluster or a constant communication with ministries, different ministries, to build up momentum towards these success stories?
No, we knocked on the door of the ministries.
All right, all right.
But it's with the international donors, for example, with ILO and QOOT, with the Dutch embassy and QOOT, with different...
So there was practically a project, and the ministry did work with...
Yes, and the ministries, they want us to be part of this, or they want themselves to be part of this project, because it's doing an impact, and we are really changing the agri-food infrastructure in Lebanon.
It's kind of insightful to see the other clusters, how to really interact with the public sector, because the public sector is there, they're doing their work, and sometimes they don't even know where the cluster is heading at. And can you tell us, Antoine, as an energy cluster, do you have any ideas how it would look as a PPP with the ministries, and what kind of ministries should we tapping the door on?
Based on the findings, the cluster will only serve as a lobbying entity that can influence regulations or standardizations or decisions. But in terms of direct PPPs,
not yet.
No.
Not on the short term.
Applicable in this case.
Okay, that's good. And Karl, I would love to ask you, what practical steps do you see for each new cluster to take, and existing one with a proven track record to build on as a momentum?
Well, the first thing is the low-hanging fruit, to build the trust and so on. And one of the easiest one is the capacity building. If I go back to the green cluster I was managing in the east of France, we made some kind of needs assessment on why these companies were losing a lot of contracts to foreign companies. And so we decided that one of the solutions was to do some eco-design. So we built together a big program with different universities, some experts. So the program was like a short training on how eco-design can affect the strategy of the companies. And then it was action plan. So it was not only training, but applying the training. So students were hired by the companies and so on to reshape basically the companies, how to do their recycling or how to do greener materials to reposition themselves. On this big action plan, basically we found a way to get it co-financed. We looked at some public, but the public were, okay, you have to think that in Europe it's forbidden for the public to finance anything more than 50%. So you always have to look for at least 50% of private, because clusters are considered as like support for business. So if one country has a support which is above 50%, all the other countries are going to say you're cheating. So,
All right.
so we always have to look, and it's easier to first look for the private, because once you have the private, then you can get the public. So we built this big action plan on eco-design for 60 SMEs, so they can move on the change, for example, change their strategy, on do greener things. They were in different fields, but it was really like making the SMEs work with the teachers from the universities for the training, then the diagnostic of each company, and then the roadmap and the action plan. So it was a big project, and it was big. Yeah. No competition, because it was like changing their own strategy.
Even though it was something I didn't prepare for, but you've mentioned a lot of times the academic sector. Where do you see the academic sector working with clusters? And that question goes to all panelists. I would love to hear some thoughts on that.
Well, because in the cluster you have a need for capacity building, so you need academics, or at a lower level, whatever. Like I remember in the southwest of France, I helped a little industrial cluster, which they were all into the plane industry, but in an area of France where there's hardly 300,000 inhabitants in the county. So the Education Nationale had to shape, basically, with the cluster, new programs so that the people would have a job there, basically. Because if you were not in the plane industry, you would not have a job. So it's really, education is really close to it. And the research, of course, because you need to have some research onto some applied area for research for the innovation. So it's crucial.
That's nice. Nadine?
So 100%, it's mainly for R&D. So we did a lot of projects with the academia, for example, for the packaging to be more sustainable. So we did a company, a member from QOOT, did it with USG. Another company also for the protein and the quality of the protein, they did it with USAC. So we have different experience, and at the end result is really good for both, because either the doctor or the student is having a real life challenge, and the member is having a solution to his problem. So I believe one of the strengths of the cluster is this collaboration, academia, R&D, innovation, and members. So this is very important.
Yeah, absolutely. I will double down on this. So a cluster can take this under their umbrella, but what we notice is that it's already happening in Lebanon. Universities are already collaborating with established companies to provide R&D and to provide qualified personnel under certain apprenticeship programs where a second-year student would join a company and then there will be a coordination between the faculty and the company on what skills to work on, and then the company will make sure the student is allocated on projects that will eventually help this trainee or apprentice really sharpen their skills in a very specific domain, thus improving access to qualified potential employees. So I totally agree, and yeah, these are the two main pillars where academia plays a great role, and I believe with cluster it becomes more institutionalized to tap into other universities that maybe do not have the mechanism. Then you can provide like a process very clear, and then you can tap into more potential talent.
And do you think with this kind of visibility, we will be able to, because we've seen a lot of reinventing the wheel in the country, and we've seen many entities either in the dairy products trying to do this by themselves, and then all of a sudden there's a small cluster working on the way. I've witnessed this. Do you see the cluster would take some responsibility in devolving or removing this kind of reinventing the wheel, because it's a lost energy at the end of the day?
Absolutely, and this is like the point that I discussed, really fragmented work and isolated work that is happening in the country. When you have the cluster and the communication is clear, then you can really drive the energy of these companies. Okay, cool, you've been doing that for a while, but we noticed that there's room to do this. and that you have the know-how and you have the capabilities, we'll provide the money. لأنه there's a market. Money مش as in grants, as in potential jobs.
Yes, yes.
And this is how you can drive the energy towards the right place instead of everyone trying to just paddle in place.
If I may add, so this is the importance of clustering because we are having SMEs and large enterprises. So to have really this dynamism and to include everyone. So that's why the small enterprises who thinks they are alone or something, no, they are part of this cluster and we are supporting them either through the academia or through the capacity building or anything, because this is very important for them to be part of a community, part of something that they are doing and they want to show it or to expand or to upgrade themselves.
Do we have room for questions? Where's Reem? You have a question. 1 second. But for this kind of communication, I do know that data is something crucial for each company. Because of the cluster, we've seen more transparency and people are more comfortable in sharing data. Could you share a bit of information around this? And I don't know, Antoine, if you have some information around this as well from your KIIs that you did.
Yeah, companies were happy to share.
They're happy to share.
We did not face any pushback when we asked for data. They were happy to share. And plus, because of the LCEC, we've been having the habit to share data every year because they compiled like a yearly report on the market. There's like what we typically publicly share. Companies were happy to share that, but when we really asked somehow personal, private questions related to market, business model, everyone shared.
Everyone shared.
Yeah,
That's
they were
good
happy
to hear
to share.
in the cluster.
It was not easy at the beginning, but
Alright.
we have to measure this because we, as QOOT, we have the silver label from an accreditation cluster excellence, and we have to take the measures to have the KPIs, and we have to know some numbers. We are not going into the P&L of the companies, but for example, how much did they export this year? What was the volume compared to last year? If they had the new products or a new locals or anything. So yes, now they are sharing. And this is part of the trust you are building. So it's very important when we will do the new clusters that members will trust the board and the team because they are giving them all their numbers.
Thank you. That's great to hear. Rima, there's a question from the gentleman.
Thank you. Yes. Hello, Khalid Naja from Wafa Logistics. I just would like to ask, can we say that clusters might bridge the gap between academics and local market needs to fill the gap of skill set shortages? I mean, the skill sets what the market is currently undergoing from shortages. Do you think the clusters might fill this gap?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Currently, there are efforts by IECD, LCEC, and IRI to work on training skilled technicians. وبرضه there's a shortage. And then working with academia will also help further fill that gap. Absolutely yes. ما تنسى, we have the problem in Lebanon where we train people and then we export the people. And then you need to train enough to compensate.
Yeah, brain exodus, I would say. Yeah, but is it, government funded or is it privately funded or is it NGO funded?
The cluster?
Yeah.
If Karl, could you give us a bit of insights of clusters and QOOT? I would love to know from our personal local experience how it is built and how it is sustained. The cluster, it is owned by who? at the end of the day? Is it public, private, NGO?
No, it's now in Lebanon, we don't have to register a cluster. So we registered under an NGO.
An NGO today.
Yes, and it is financed part from the member fees and part from the international donors.
Okay.
So this is how we are doing our projects.
And from an international perspective?
Yeah, it depends where you are. But in Europe, there are NGOs. In the US, it depends. Either there is no governance or it's 100% by the state. Okay. If you take the state of Georgia in the biotech cluster, it's just the state that decides everything. But normally it's NGOs, so that the clusters are really much more autonomous.
So it's a contextual aspect. And that's it. Do we have other? Yes, Rima.
Thank you.
يعطيكم العافية.
Thank you.
Just the word in Arabic. Just to highlight on what they just said, we have the queen of clustering on the stage. We do. I'm just going to do a small intervention تبعاً تعقيباً على اللي قالته نادين. In Lebanon, we are working to create a law that Nadine was talking about that we lack it, is how to register a cluster in Lebanon as we're working on registering or a legal format with implementing decrees أو المراسيم التطبيقية للقانون for LSEs, either social enterprises or clustering. Rami isn't here, but Beritech led on a program, and many of us sit on the board of this, and we are lobbying to create a law where we can have a very clear definition of what clusters are, how you can register it, and who is the body that actually manages and supervises clusters. So we are in the process, and it is a private-public collaboration. We can't use PPPs because it's a law that we don't have implementing decrees in Lebanon yet. هو قانون ما عندنا مراسيم تطبيق، فحتى بحديثنا ما فينا نقول PPP. So we're going to be diplomatic about it.
We're acting towards it, I believe,
Inshallah.
in the policy making.
Inshallah.
It's fake PPPs, the clusters. It's NGOs that are supporting partly by public, that's all.
Yeah, we're trying to empower the government in Lebanon. So we also like to sugarcoat it when we talk on panels. That's it.
Thank you for the intervention. Do you have any comments, do we have any other questions from the audience? Yeah, please.
It would be nice if the cluster would, when you talk about capacity building, you help us in standardizing what should go on every package when we need to go outside. So if we have a product, we need help. Everybody that is producing a product needs help in what are the standard features that must go on the package so it can be exported outside and to be visually appealing also, not only that. So I don't need how to manage my business. I need help in areas where the things that I never did before, I need help with.
Salah, we need help in everything, and we need support in everything. The challenge in the agri-food sector is that it is very product-oriented and country-oriented, so we cannot work on all of these. Anyhow, I know that Dr. Mark is here, and he can answer this question. Mark is the executive director of QOOT, and he can answer this question better than me.
I would like to hear some thoughts from Antoine, because on the capacity, because what I've heard that we have a strong ecosystem in the energy sector. We have people that can solve many problems that we have in because of the country, because of the context of the country. Today, on a technical level, I believe we're in a good place. Where do you see the cluster giving some capacity building workshops? Where's the gap in that? I don't see it on the technical level, but as you mentioned, is it possibly how to expand outside of the country and how to do it? Is it one of them? If you have any insights.
Come again? ما فهمت السؤال مزبوط.
I'm going to go back. So on the technical level, as I've heard, because of the context, because of the human resources, the human capital that we have, I think we're doing good.
Hey, we're okay. We're already abroad.
What can the cluster possibly give as a capacity building for, specifically for the energy sector? What?
Like again, it's the same point basically. يلي هي putting people together. ما نشتغل in a fragmented way. And then like the main point هي tapping into diaspora. So الكلاستر بتصير مثل quality stamp. لأنه اليوم to do that you need to establish credibility with trust. And this gap, the cluster is able to close it much faster than you can do it on your own. If you are part of a cluster with a quality seal إذا بدك إنه اليوم أنا إذا بدي if I want to buy some ما بعرف product to eat, if it's under QOOT ما بفكر مرتين خلاص okay it's under QOOT then it's good. فهمت شو قصدي يعني someone vetted it. Someone did it. In our case إذا هيدا الشركة part of this cluster then it makes things easier if you want to talk, if you want to find local partners abroad, if you want to be a service provider for someone, you know, as someone abroad is looking for a certain specific service to outsource أو حتى to outsource manpower من هون مثل الموديل of the call center يعني. It's something that we're doing already. If the cluster does this, then you're opening up a market beyond borders يعني. And as a result, you are helping these companies to diversify from a geopolitical perspective and thus retain employment.
Thank you. One last question.
Sorry. So to facilitate the matter to our audience, can we say that clusters are another type of startup, for example, in some way or another? Or what does it differ from startups?
الصوت منه واضح. If you can repeat, please. ما سمعت مزبوط الصوت.
I mean, I'm saying to facilitate the matter to our audience, can we say that clusters is another form of startups? Or what is the difference between a cluster and a startup? Or is it another brainstorming or experienced individuals that are doing the same?
I'm gonna build on that question, and hopefully you will develop an extensive answer as a wrap up for this session. Fast forward 2030, what would look like for a cluster in Lebanon and the broader MENA region? What can you see a cluster in the country, either energy, agriculture, waste, or education as well? What can we do? What is a cluster?
A cluster, when you put a group of companies together across the same value chain. يعني اليوم نحن في عنا well-established companies in energy that are already working abroad and here. You have companies that do very specific niche thing, مثل mounting structure for solar panels. Okay, but he does that very well. إذا هيدا بيضلوا بس in the Lebanese market حيفوت stagnation, and then a few years down the line either he needs to pivot and change to something else or go bankrupt. So when you start gathering these companies across different parts of the value chain and you cluster them together in this group, and then there's هيدا الكلاستر is institutionalized. يعني there's a team dedicated that is seeking opportunities abroad, talking to these different members in this cluster to understand what's their strong point, typical SWOT assessment for each. And then they can start identifying gaps and see how they can fill the gaps from whatever they have in hand. It's like building a puzzle. They complement each other. And eventually, the goal هو إنه هالcluster will help them to make a bigger cake. هلا in QOOT's case, this is literal, making a bigger cake. But anyways, and then, jokes aside, and then everyone will eventually take advantage of that.
Can I answer you also from a concrete example? Here we have the idea of startup because all the members usually of a cluster are innovators. They have the entrepreneurship. They share their know-how. So this is the idea. But in QOOT, for example, we have a company of 3 employees and we have another company of 2,000 employees. So there is a huge difference so they are not startup, but they are all, to be part of a cluster or to be part of QOOT, you need to really be innovative. You need to bring a new, not only product, but a new mindset and doing an impact in the country you are working and if you want to export. But it's not a startup, no.
Yeah, I will give you the teacher answer. Because I teach in Strasbourg in clustering to the master for French and German. So clustering on entrepreneurs is a two sides of the same coin, the way of reorganizing business. Before, when business was not really organized, you either have the old boys network, like who do I know, blah, 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 or the business branch. Like he said, it's around the value chain, on the supply chain, but it's a value chain which is enlarged because it's like clustering. It comes from the digital industry, so everyone is like in a cloud. It's not a pyramid, that's what I'm saying, because before, everyone was looking in its pyramid. And I would give some examples. Easy one. If you've been to France, do you know BlaBlaCar?
Oui.
Yeah. So the train, like SNCF, they were into their competition only with the plane. And suddenly, 3 years after BlaBlaCar was created, they realized that sharing the car was costing them 1 million passengers a year, basically. So basically now when you organize a cluster, you don't organize a cluster in the car industry, but in the mobility, because everything can come from everywhere, and you include some digitalization on some roadmap of what the digitalization on other technologies can affect you. Because if you stay in your car industry, then you won't see, like most of the European constructors, that the electric vehicle is going to take over, okay? They were all focusing with a blurring effect on how to connect the vehicle, but not changing the transmission, the engine. So this is really the cluster effect, is like working on a large value chain in a cloud, so where everyone is equal and not OEM at the top of the pyramid ordering everyone. Yeah, it's another way of collective intelligence. It's like doing design thinking together, if you want.
Exactly. So thank you for the lovely question. I'm really happy to be able to share all these insights with the crowd and be able for you to expand what we've seen in the cluster in Lebanon. What I know as well from the experiences that you shared and that I've witnessed, each infrastructure has a different ecosystem, different vibe and different feel. But basically here we're all talking about removing fragmentation, trying to align all relevant stakeholders within the sector to work all together towards a more sustainable one. And this is why Berytech has chosen to put the sustainability energy sector. It's not because it's only green, but it does revolve around the economic impact, around the social impact behind it. To wrap up the session, I would love to go back to Lebanon. And each one of you can help us draw a picture of a cluster, whether it's agriculture, energy, waste, education, and many more. Where do you see it going in the next 5 years? And just as a sentence, more of an advice, what to look into.
Okay. I see us working with an outward vision. In the past 4 years, the hits that we took in this country and the way we dealt with it was a big learning curve for everyone. And I see in the future that with a cluster, we will have the ability to look outwards and to be able to really sharpen our skills and then learn from each other and be able to cooperate and to look outwards and to be able to really expand and create value beyond the Lebanese borders. And Yeah, beyond the Lebanese borders, basically. Yeah, this is how I see the cluster. يعني definitely
Expanding.
help us have a much bigger reach. لأنه we're there. ما في شيء ناقص.
Thank you, Antoine. Nadine?
Yes, so with all the mega trends and all the disruption that is happening now in Lebanon and worldwide, so we are well prepared to expand. And I see ourselves, I mean, as QOOT and other clusters, as a hub of green economy and sustainable practices and doing the great impact. We have everything. So we have the youth, we have the know-how, we have the academia, we have the entrepreneurial. It's only the will to continue, and I'm seeing QOOT at least the hub for the region, for all the
nice.
agriculture and agri-food, not only agriculture.
Thank you. It's good to hear that. Karl?
Yeah, well, in the education, it's kind of a special sector. So we are doing it like a startup, actually. We are not, we put we are beta testing, basically, the cluster before we are creating it. So we have a pilot project with 20 schools, and we told them, tell us how to become the school of the future, how to create a citizen in Lebanon for the 21st century, regarding knowledge society and so on. And we mixed parents, school, teachers, entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs, the ministry, and we try to create a cluster out of this and projects for the school. So we are really beta testing like a startup on how to build it. And I think if the model is working, we can expand it to other countries or to some other areas of culture and where Lebanon is really a light for the MENA area.
Well, I hope we will get there.
Can I add one thing? As
Please,
Antoine
please.
mentioned, so Lebanese clusters should be the quality seal of the industry. So this is it. The clustering is Lebanese quality sealed.
Well, that's a mission for all of us. Thank you so much, panelists. It was a lovely talk. And thank you for participating and staying with us. And enjoy the rest of the event. And feel free to reach out to panelists after the event to have some questions. Thank you all.